Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Elizabeth, and this is Public Comment. News by the neighbors for the neighbors. We're local moms and small business owners digging for the issues so you don't have to. We bring you facts and honest narratives in a format that fits your busy morning schedule. Speaking of morning, Sarah, kids off to camp. Summer officially started.
Off to camp. And it's so crazy because this summer started in May with heat waves and 80s and low 90s and everything else. And then, of course, the first week the kids are in camp, it's raining in the low 70s, maybe high 60s.
I know.
Come on. What are we doing here? El Nino. Get it together.
And I feel like, though, at the same time, ever since I've lived in New England, I feel like there's always been, the heat waves are definitely coming earlier. Mm-hmm. But I feel like for years in a row, it was like the weekend before Memorial Day when none of the pools are open. It's scorching. Yeah. Memorial Day is 50-50. And then the first weekend of June, I'm in a sweater. It's what is happening?
Welcome to New England, where you always keep a pair of sneakers, flip-flops, and snow boots in your car.
It's true. Well, and I grew up in Denver, Colorado, right? And so we're in between, in that situation, you're in between the mountains and a desert. So we would get air. I don't understand weather terms, but we would get climate from both. Yeah. And so it would not be uncommon to have a Christmas dinner on your deck, in flip-flops, because it was 65 degrees that year. And then the next year it was we're in a blizzard. You could have it either way.
Oh my God. So it sounds like Denver weather is even crazier than New England weather.
Denver weather is notoriously crazy. It's a huge stereotype of, or Denver, just that whole kind of area around that pocket of Colorado that kind of sits in between those two climates is notoriously really wild. So I'm used to it to a certain extent, and this is I think this is a stereotype of people from the West, but we're always but it's a dry heat, so it's not that bad.
I hear that all the time. And I have to say, from traveling in Jordan where it is also a dry heat to then living in Georgia where it is definitely a wet heat.
I do want to point out that I'm talking about Denver, Colorado, and you're talking about Jordan.
Yeah. Because I've never been in Denver in the summer and stuff, but dry heat.
I think Jordan is a hotter desert than
it is a hotter desert, but you know what? I could handle 100 degrees in Jordan so much better than I could handle 100 degrees in Georgia. Well, so speaking of climate screwing over our lives and making it harder.
What a sexy transition, Sarah.
Thank you. Here's some other stuff that are also impacting our environment and climate. And so I don't think anyone in town is going to be surprised that this is our segue to talking about the Quarry.
The Quarry and the Junkyard, right? We're gonna
Junkyard.
Yeah, we're going to do them together because I think the pattern of the story here it's a very familiar, similar pattern.
No, exactly. And so it took a while, honestly, because everyone refers to it as the Quarry, to know what it was. And so for the longest time, I was like, where is this mysterious quarry? Only to find out I've been driving past it every freaking day, basically. Yeah. Because the Quarry is actually material sand and stone. Yeah. And so it's on Greenville Road. If you guys know the end of it as it comes up to Route 7. That's exactly where it is. Big trucks coming through, and I think there's another access point a little bit farther down on Route 7 too, where they come in kind of from the back. Yep.
It's referred to colloquially as the Quarry, or sometimes the Pound Hill Quarry, right? Are the two more just the names that people kind of throw around.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's kind of dig into material sand and stone, into the Quarry, okay? Because this has a long and storied history, so we're going to give kind of a brief overview so we can dig into the current kind of meat of things. But
before you get going, I do want to say, Sarah and I have a policy that we don't name private citizens without their permission.
Right.
But in this case, I did reach out to this individual and he did give permission. So we want to just sort of credit. I know, right? I was on top of things.
Love
so
it.
we do want to credit local citizen and activist Jason Richer. He is the one who has he lives near the quarry, and he is the one who has he's done all of the public records requests. He's done all of he has drones that he has flown over to capture the activity of the quarry. So anytime I have read an article talking about the history of the quarry, Jason is cited as being the one who has provided all of these documents. So we do want to just make sure that all of the work that he has done is acknowledged and credited, because this has been, I think, at this point a 4-year, 2022 I think is when it started being reported on, but I'm sure he was 2021 probably actually starting the work. So probably a 5-year journey.
Yeah.
Of making sure that this stays at the forefront of public awareness. So, thank you to Jason for all the work that you've done.
100%. I mean, he goes really above and beyond to be very detailed and make sure that the evidence he gathers is actual. I mean, God bless him. He has noise, decibel meters, basically, in his yard with a camera on it with a timestamp so that you can see exact time and date that these trucks are going by when they're not supposed to, and that they're violating noise ordinances, right? So he's very diligent with making sure that this does not turn into a he said, they said situation.
Yeah, and I can't imagine all of his equipment is cheap.
Right.
I know that he has lost it. He lost a drone. I feel when he said that he posted on Facebook that he lost one of his drones, I almost felt like a community child was missing.
Right.
I was not
people were worried.
I know. I was not the drone. So yeah, I mean, that not only the time investment, but also I'm sure the financial investment of purchasing all of the equipment that he has used to sort of track what they're doing is, I mean, it's a financial expense as well.
Yep. No, exactly.
But anyway, so now that we are, here is the whole history. It goes back to the 1950s. Sarah, if you want to get us started.
Absolutely. So in the 1950s is basically when quarry operations, when the land was purchased to start the quarry operations. In the 1960s, we passed the first mining ordinances, having certain requirements and things like that. And then in the 1970s is when North Smithfield banned any new mining operations. So the quarry as it existed then was granted grandfather rights, but there was a caveat with that when the property was sold, then those rights expire. So they could not continue to mine on that property once it was sold. Okay. So what happened was in 1985, the original family that owned the company started to operate under a new name. So that's when it became Material Sand and Stone Corporate.
Well, and I think I want to just, because this is an important detail that is what makes this a little bit more legally complicated, is they sold the quarry to themselves. So they established an LLC, Material Sand and Stone, or a corporation. I'm not sure their legal classification, but they established a corporate entity and then sold the quarry to the corporate entity. And so I think part of the question is that is a sale from one entity to another entity. Do the grandfather rights travel with that sale?
Right.
That's a question for the lawyers, but that is part of why when you see on Facebook, if you are following this and you see a lot of questions around, does this quarry actually even have grandfather rights anymore? That is that sale to the corporate entity is part of why that's sort of disputed.
Right. Yeah. So, and I think just for one piece, so it looks like they began operating under that name. There was a separate official sale in 2013 to Pound Hill Realty, LLC.
Oh, okay. So that must be... Sarah's like, let me cook, Elizabeth. I'm getting to it.
Actually. So, well, because So then to rewind a little bit, to go
Yeah.
back to the mid-late 80s,
Right.
okay, a second plat of land was purchased essentially to expand mining operations. And this is also part of the argument that a lot of the issue
Right.
people have, okay?
Right.
The zoning official for North Smithfield issued a cease and desist, stated that because this is a new purchase, it cannot be used for mining because we
Okay.
do not allow mining operations. And at that point, hadn't for going on about 10, almost 20 years. However, what ended up happening was the owner of the company filed a letter claiming to want to use the land for a horse farm. I think we can all kind of put two and two together here that it was not actually ever used for a horse farm.
Jason's drones have not detected a horse. I have not seen a
Correct.
horse in the drone footage.
Right.
There are horses
And
that live on that street, but they are not
right,
owned.
I was going to
Or,
say, funny enough, right
yeah,
next to the quarry, there is a horse.
there's some
I don't know if
horses.
there's a horse farm or if it's just a family that owns
No,
horses, but like
no,
there's horses. It's
I
just
think
not,
there's
it
more
is
than
not
one
material sand
family.
stones.
Well, but I think
Yeah.
this is part of the issue, right? And I know we're sort of jumping ahead, but part of the issue is like there are animals and people and children, right? That this area is sorry, simultaneously like it is, I think, zoned residential, but they
Yes.
are large properties with lots of space, and so a lot of people do keep various farm animals on the property, right? That are, you
Yeah.
know, yeah.
I mean, and not for nothing either, but this is also on Greenville Road, where if you
Mm-hmm.
drive down just a bit, you are at the intersection of Pound Hill Road and Greenville Road.
Mm-hmm.
And not Pound Hill, sorry. You're at the intersection of Providence Pike and Greenville Road.
Yep.
And the high school, the middle school, and the elementary school are all right there.
Yep.
So when the wind hits at just the right direction, everything that is getting picked up from this quarry is being blown
Yep.
all the way over across all of these different fields. Goodwin Brothers is also over there,
Yep.
and several of their fields are in that direction too.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention all of the other residents in the town, the kids, everything
Yep.
else. So I think this has implications from an environmental perspective of what is this doing to our environment, because I am an environmentalist, but it also has a significant impact on everyone in town because these are our neighbors.
Yep.
This is where our kids go to school. This is where we swing by to get fresh corn and vegetables in the summer. This is where we have Pumpkin Fest, right? On the
Yeah.
field behind the high school and the middle school.
And the Halloween festival too at Goodwin Brothers, right? Every year,
Yes.
people with the haunted
Yep.
hayride.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of implications for this. So, needless to say, this was not used for a horse farm. In 2001 and 2006, there were Superior Court rulings that allowed the quarry to use residential roads and ordered the business to operate under a status quo. So basically, things just need to continue operating as they have been. And so this kind of put up a block for the town for several years.
And this is, sorry, I like woke up this morning with this like frog in my throat. Sorry. This is what I keep finding like kind of confusing because there is this string of court rulings of like 2001, 2013, and then there was like this sort of status quo, and then they went back to court. And it's a bit hard to track like what all the individual rulings actually said. But my understanding is like something about the 2013 ruling or whatever year it was wasn't like a permanent ruling. Like it was a temporary injunction or something like that. But then it was like never, someone had to follow up and just never did, I guess was my understanding. Okay.
So typically from when I've seen courts, and for context, my background in this is working in forensics, which is like legally associated psychology stuff.
Right.
And also just my grandmother was an attorney and just being a total law nerd. And so typically when a judge will put things into a status quo kind of place, it is typically an injunction saying that, like, as court proceedings continue, we're just going to pause things where they are right now. And so we're going to freeze in place how they are functioning so that nothing changes until we come to a decision. And then once we have our decision, then we're going to change what's going on. So otherwise, that things are going to stay as status quo, like that injunction essentially, would be a ruling saying that, hey, you win and you can do this. So doing something like that really sounds much more like an injunction rather than an actual ruling.
Okay. But then we have this long stretch of time where sort of nothing is happening.
Exactly. And so who knows what was going on with the town administrators or the court case or what have you during that time. But from 2006, when this status quo freeze was put into place, until now, in 2013, just a reminder, that is when the property was sold. And so any grandfathered rights would definitely have expired, even if it wasn't back in, when was it? It was like 1985 when the operating name changed. It definitely would have, those rights definitely would have, according to the law, expired in 2013. And so somehow they were still allowed to operate despite that. And then in 2022, that's when, and probably even earlier, that's when residents started filing formal complaints, because at that point, the quarry had started to mine without a license, operate outside of the legal operating hours, exceed noise ordinances, a persistent smell of asphalt, all of this stuff. So
I know one resident mentioned, like, going out and just, like, wiping all of the silicone like, you could see, like, if you ran your hand across, I think it was, like, her fence, like, it would come up just, like, covered in silicone dust.
Yeah. And, I mean, all of this stuff, the silica dust, anything else that they're mining, like, all of this has significant health impacts in terms of your lungs and everything else. So it's not something to be taken lightly. At the same time, though, in 2022, Material Sand and Stone filed motions in Superior Court looking for judgment and a permanent injunction based on 2 prior court decisions. So, again, the judge ordered the business can operate as a status quo, like everything just kind of going as normal during the court's review. Okay. Now, just a year later, in 2023, a Superior Court judge denied the quarry's petition for autonomy. They gave the town explicitly the right to oversee the quarry itself and required the company to apply for the proper permits.
I do also, again, want to just point out that my understanding of the reason why all this happened, going back to Jason, was he started coming to town council meetings, I think in 2022. I think a couple other residents who live on that road came as well. Because she is an elected official, I'll also say Rebecca DeCristoforo. This is, my understanding is this is why she got involved in politics in the first place, right? It was like advocating around this quarry. She lives on that road. I know she came forward in front of town council. I don't think that was in 2022. I think that was later. But again, like, more residents are starting to kind of speak up. And I think that is why North Smithfield then decided to bring the quarry back to court. So this initial proceeding, I think, if I understand it correctly, North Smithfield, there was like kind of like whispers around doing something. And then the quarry was like, let's just get ahead of this and get back to court first. And so, right, all of this is kind of happening in part, again, because of citizen advocacy, not necessarily because North Smithfield, and this is going to be important as we kind of tell this larger story, North Smithfield, the government wasn't the one who was like noticing, paying attention, seeing this happening. It was really the citizens that were starting to get more vocal.
Exactly. And honestly, I think in general, that is one of the things about government, is that nothing really happens because a politician has noticed something. like when you're looking at stuff like this that affect your day-to-day life, action happens because citizens notice it and say something and
It's
come together.
it's almost as if you and I believe that so strongly that we started a podcast
Huh.
designed to educate citizens and get them involved in their local government.
You know, I wondered why we were recording these and putting them up, like why we couldn't just have this conversation like via text or in person like we normally do.
No, this actually all started where I just like tricked Sarah into having a conversation and then just recorded it and was like, you're on a podcast now.
You know, I was really confused about like why you were being so explicit saying that like we're moms talking about politics. Because I'm like, girl.
Sarah's like, why are you reading off of a script right now? This is really weird.
Like, why? Like, we both know the history of the town. Why do we need to talk about it first? I was so confused. So you know what? I think this is what, episode 6?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So glad I caught up.
Yep.
And you got me in the loop.
Anyway. But yeah, so again, your voices matter, right? Like, and I think
they really do.
Citizens, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about this more at the end, but like, what is the power of the average everyday citizen who's maybe not going to run for office? Like, what is the power that you have in these kinds of situations? What can you do? We're definitely going to talk about that. But I think this is a really good example of like the only reason this is on the radar is because of really informal citizen advocacy.
Right.
That did not go through a nonprofit or a PAC or, it was just a bunch of people, figuring out how to make a difference in their town.
Yeah, no, exactly. So to kind of bring this up to more modern times, because now it is under the town's purview for the road use permits and things like that. Material Sand and Stone did apply for those permits. The town granted the permits. Denying something like that could have been just an easy way to say, hey, no, you can't use this road. And, been a way to kind of shut all of this down. But they approved it. The abutters, so the people whose property connect or abut the quarry itself, had essentially put forth and said like, hey, we don't want this, please. They advocated and said, don't approve this. We have, at that point, they had still cited environmental concerns about what was happening. They had also produced evidence saying that the operations were expanding without oversight, all of this stuff. The road use permits were still approved. And that was in 2024. So just 2 years ago, honestly.
Yep.
Right.
And I think they were reapproved recently.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% on that, but I believe so.
Yeah.
So with that, Rhode Island DEM was notified of some stuff that was going on, and they notified the company that there were several flooding violations. So essentially the physical property is not being managed well or safely. They had to build some culverts to manage illegal discharges. There's also concerns that people have about what happens when it rains, because all of this runoff is then going to soak into the ground, and all of the dust and everything could then potentially get into people's wells. And I think, if I remember correctly, there have been several people whose wells have been impacted by this.
Yeah.
So then, in addition to that, 2025, Material Sand and Stone requested a zoning amendment to create an industrial special management district overlay, and it would permanently change the quarry itself into an industrial zone, which would give them a whole lot more leeway to do whatever they want with it. Currently it
and to mine both properties, right? Like that's what they want is to freely mine both the original property that they've had for years and this new property, this abutting property that they acquired, right? They want to create both properties into one singular industrial zoning district or industrial mining district. But my understanding is that would allow them to mine essentially right up to the property line of the abutters who are completely residential.
Yep. And so they're supposed to be even up to, I think there's supposed to be like a certain amount of space that they have to leave between the property line and where they mine. And from my understanding, some of the concerns that are being raised recently are that that is not being followed. And they are going right up to the property line, which has significant concerns for soil erosion for the adjoining properties, even closer ability of noise and everything else, silica dust, everything. So that was in 2025 is when they petitioned. The current issue of why the quarry keeps coming up in front of the town council right now is because there keeps being hearings pushed off over and over and over again about why. I mean, and to be honest, the town is the one who the judge has said, you have the power to say yes or to say no.
Right.
And we can, as a town, just say yes or no. However, they keep bringing in independent experts of what this means. The reports have been delayed multiple times. A hearing was scheduled for October. It was postponed again because the company's attorney failed to notify abutters of the meeting. New hearing was then scheduled for December. And then at December 15th of 2025, just because this is public record, and they're elected at the suggestion of Councilman John Beauregard, the town council chose to pursue mediation. So essentially, we're going to negotiate with Material Sand and Stone when this whole entire time we have no indication of good faith from them. And if anything, obviously, my opinion on this is being very obvious. And I think everyone in the town is on the same page. Yeah. But essentially, you were trying to negotiate with someone who's coming to the table in bad faith.
Yep.
And so why would someone holding the power to say no ever even think, oh, yeah, let me try and negotiate with someone who's already coming here in bad faith when I hold the power? And it makes no sense to me.
In the interest of fair reporting,
which is why I'm handing it off to you.
I will attempt to encapsulate the argument of the quarry.
Yep.
The quarry's argument, my understanding, I'm not an attorney, but from what I've read, the quarry's argument is essentially that grandfather rights follow the company, not the property. So they believe, or they have argued, that because the same company has purchased the abutting property, the grandfather rights extend to the new property as well as the old property. That's argument number one. I'm trying, Sarah. Okay.
I'm biting my tongue.
I know. And again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm just trying my best to sort of be opposing counsel here. So
it's helpful to give both sides of it so people can understand why Material Sand and Stone actually have, like, why they think that this is something to pursue, and to kind of understand maybe why the town has taken the steps that they've taken.
Yes. So that's argument number one, is like questionable about what grandfather rights mean, who they extend to, how the sale in 2013 impacts grandfather rights, how them purchasing this abutting property affects grandfather rights. And that's one of those things that, like, I would assume lawyers would have to look at, like, case law and precedent. And, you know, these are things that, like, the judge has weighed in, you know, about that they don't necessarily have the grandfather rights that they think that they have, but, like, this has all been back and forth. So that's number one. Number two, their argument is that this quarry is also positioned next to a Superfund site, which is an unrelated thing, but does impact what can be zoned in that area.
So for those of us who are not lingo experts with that, what, in a quick sentence or so, what is a Superfund site?
I obviously know what a Superfund site is, but I'm gonna let you explain it because I'm so generous in my willingness to share the mic. I have no idea. I've seen this term thrown around. I know it's a thing. I know it's a big thing. I know the EPA controls it, but, like, actually, I don't actually know what a Superfund site is.
Okay, so a Superfund site is an area that is already contaminated. Okay. And it has been designated by the EPA, so the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, for long-term cleanup. So basically it's saying that we already know that this place is having a massive negative impact on our environment, and we have to clean this up. And there are steps and things like that. So it's like old mines, landfills, abandoned factories, hazardous waste, stuff like that. So the simple fact that we have a Superfund site so close to it, and we have something else that's damaging the environment too, it's
Sarah,
almost like...
we're doing opposing counsel right now.
No, you're doing opposing counsel. I'm doing shut them down.
Anyway, so now that you know what a Superfund site is, basically their argument is like, there's nothing else really that can be done here, right? Like we can't sell it to another business. We can't sell it to residential. Like we might as well, basically I think the argument is like, there's no reason not to allow the mining to continue because there's nothing else really functionally that can be done with the property is sort of their argument. That's it. That's the closing argument. Again, I think what's really hard about trying to be
so
fair,
hard.
I know. Well, I think what's hard about trying to be fair is like when you're trying to look at the Quarry's arguments from my perspective, like, okay, sure. Even if that were true, they have not operated in good faith anyway, right? And it's like, I don't see how you being close to a Superfund site allows you to violate blasting ordinances that only allow you to blast during certain hours or only allow you to drive trucks on the road during certain hours. You know, I don't see why it being next to a Superfund site would necessarily mean that it's appropriate for you to be mining right up to the line of an abutting property. So again, I'm not saying that I think these are good arguments, but these are the arguments that the Quarry has made as to why they should be allowed to continue. So here we are. Basically, what ended up happening at the last town council meeting, they were doing mediation, and then there was like a continuation. We finally come to the point where it's like, okay, we're going to get an update. And the update was essentially that Material Sand and Stone withdrew their petition. And now we're just in limbo, right? There's really no question moving forward of like what we can do from here. And so this is where I think maybe we transition to kind of the junkyard, give that history, and then we can talk about maybe some of the bigger picture things in town that are just kind of like fueling a lot of this.
Absolutely.
If that works for you. So yeah, the junkyard. Do you want to give that history, Sarah, or do you want me to do it?
Let me have you do it because I think you have better notes on that.
I wouldn't go that far, but basically what is happening. So the formal name is HT Auto Junkyard is the proper name of this business. Similar to how residents just refer to the Quarry as the Quarry, we pretty much have just been referring to the junkyard as the junkyard, and everybody more or less knows what junkyard you're talking about. So for many years, this junkyard operated really in harmony with the neighborhood, right? Everybody got along. My understanding is actually the person who ran the junkyard also lived in the neighborhood. As is
and
common.
Their family did too.
And as is common, I think, in small towns. And the previous junkyard's owner's family continues to live in the neighborhood. And obviously has a lot of feelings about seeing how this business that used to be owned by their family member, like how it's been going. So the junkyard was at some point sold to this new owner. And the new owner was not following proper procedure, proper protocol, town ordinances on how to run and operate the junkyard. And it was becoming a public nuisance. I first started to see complaints on the town Facebook group probably early to mid 2025, I would say. People posting pictures and saying that they've called the building inspector and they're just like not seeing anything happen.
Yep.
Turns out the junkyard had gotten several violations from the building inspector. And it was basically like the building inspector would come out, would issue a violation. It wouldn't get fixed. He would issue another violation, right? And so we just keep kind of getting violations until eventually it got to the point where it was questionable of if the town would renew the business license. That is what then brings this sort of more into the public record and more into being kind of in the very clear public eye, because this is now getting dragged out in town council meetings. So town council brings the owner to this town council meeting, and the owner retains an attorney. There's going to be a theme here about attorneys and court and how that impacts things that happen. So basically, the initial decision was basically like, you have, I think, 2 weeks, because the town council meetings happen kind of every 2 weeks. So it's like, you have 2 weeks to kind of clean this up. He comes back 2 weeks, and in every 2 weeks, there's sort of this sense of like, there's been some progress, but it hasn't been fixed. Amidst all of this, because North Smithfield has public comment periods, and then in addition, when you're doing these hearings, you have to have a public comment period where you explicitly allow the community to come forward and speak. The community is coming forward and talking about all of these other issues that were not captured in these violations, right? So they're sort of in front of town council testifying, more or less. And they brought pictures, they brought evidence, right? It wasn't, they didn't, just count on their own word. And it was also a lot of them. And I think that's something to keep in mind, is we're not talking about like one individual person who doesn't like the junkyard versus the junkyard. We're talking about most of the neighborhood, if not all of the neighborhood, coming forward, corroborating each other's stories, and bringing evidence through photos. So we keep getting these continuations and continuations and continuations. Ultimately, it sort of comes down to a fence and how much of the property needs to be fenced. And to make a long story short, the town council ultimately ended up extending the business license. And what seemed to have happened, in that process, was the town council said that they could only respond to the complaints as they were provided by the building inspector, and could not consider the additional complaints made by the residents. Now, what the residents were essentially complaining about was like, he was not properly draining the fluids out of the cars. He was not crushing them, so they were just piling up and piling up and piling up. They had evidence of chemical runoff going into what could have contaminated the water supply, in addition to just like public nuisance issues of this becoming a huge eyesore because the property wasn't being properly fenced. He was also taking in... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, and safety issues.
And safety issues,
like,
yeah.
If you have all of these cars who do not have the fluids drained, you have all of this other stuff just sitting around.
Yep.
Like, there's understandable and serious concerns about what happens if these cars are being stacked on each other improperly, or just the wrong thing at the wrong time, and it starts to roll. Again, like all these fluids just seeping into the ground. Obviously, these are cars in a junkyard, so they are not ones right off the lot from a dealership. They're going to keep rusting and cracking and all of this stuff.
Yeah, and there is evidence that he was also taking appliances and stuff that he wasn't supposed to take, right? And so, in addition, the town council, during this process, as they were saying, you have these continuations to try and fix these issues, we're saying, like, you cannot take new cars. And we have evidence from the community that he, in fact, was taking new cars. So he wasn't even listening to the town council's directives during this probationary period where he was supposed to be getting everything fixed up. So what the town council ultimately said was, like, we can only respond to the building inspector's complaints. We can't respond to the things that were brought forth, like these new allegations that were brought forth in public comment, based on the issues that were filed in the complaint. Like, the person has made enough progress that we will extend the business license. And here we are, right? And so my understanding is this continues to be an issue. There continue to be issues with the property. And it seems like the impression that I got is that, like, the town has to call the building inspector. The building inspector has to come out and write a new violation based off of that evidence. That evidence then has to be brought back in front of the town council. Like, it just seems like this very convoluted process. It seems like there needs to be some mechanism by which citizens independent of zoning and building inspectors, can come forward and provide evidence, and that actually be taken into consideration and investigated and followed up on. And that mechanism as of right now appears not to exist, or if it does exist, people are sort of being told that it doesn't.
Right.
And so that's where we kind of land with both of these businesses. The businesses, both per citizen reports, continue to violate ordinances, and they're not being good neighbors. They both have major safety and environmental concerns, right? We're not talking about a restaurant staying open an hour past close.
Right.
We're not talking about like minor violations that, you know, are technically against the rules but aren't really affecting anybody. We're talking about like really serious issues to people's health, safety, and like quality of life. And that's where we are, right? There's no real plan for either business to, as of right now, to do much of anything.
And I think this goes back to some of the questions that we've asked before, which is, what do we want the town to look like? You know, what kind of town do we want to live in? Do we want for our families? We have 2 Superfund sites, which means the environment is already being impacted. And now we have 2 others that in the future may turn into more Superfund sites.
I think that there is something about being in a small town. And when we talk about wanting to preserve North Smithfield's kind of small town charm and rural character, this is what that means. It means the things that happen to my neighbor are something that I care about, even if it's not directly impacting me. And I think that is actually why so many residents are really angry, is because they see this happening to their friends. There is only one school for each grade, right? Like there's one elementary, one middle, one high school in North Smithfield. So my kids are going to school. My kid is going to school with these people's kids. If I go to church, which doesn't happen as often as it should, but sometimes I do go. So I do like a couple services to just cleanse the sins, you know, a couple times a year. If I go to church, I'm going to church next to these people. If I go to the grocery store, I'm shopping for food with these people. These are my community and my friends. And I don't want them to have contaminated drinking water, and I don't want them to have to worry that chemicals are going to explode next to their house, right? I want them to feel safe and comfortable in their communities. And so it is hard to be in a town with a council in its presence form that seems to view itself as powerless. And that is something that I just don't understand and continue to struggle to understand, is how a council that is responsible for governing can continue to come back and sort of present itself as helpless.
I struggle with the same thing. I think there's definitely things about how our town is being governed that could use a light shined on them.
Well, and I think a couple thoughts around the layers of government here. Because I think that's also something that these 2 businesses really have in common, is that it's impacting multiple kind of layers of government. So Superfund sites are overseen by the EPA. That's a federal body. Obviously, the quarry, there's connection there, right, between the quarry and the Superfund site. Then the quarry itself and the environmental issues of the quarry are supposed to be regulated by the Rhode Island Department of Energy Management, DEM. Department of Environmental Management, yes. Yeah. E's are complicated. So Department of Environmental Management, DEM, is supposed to be overseeing the quarry in terms of the environmental impact. My understanding is that DEM does not necessarily have all of the experts that it needs on staff to weigh in on the quarry, and they are not fast to respond. They are not always well communicative. So that's a state level thing. I want to be careful here because I have not seen this on record, right? I have not seen this person that I'm about to talk about publicly come forward and say this, but I have heard citizen stories of trying to get in touch with our state representatives and say, is there anything you can do? and the state representatives sort of saying like, well, that's the purview of the town council. This isn't my jurisdiction. And again, this comes back to, as a state representative, you are an entity within the state government. Mm-hmm. I do not understand why you cannot say, I will contact DEM and try to see what the holdup is. Even if the answer from DEM is we're understaffed and underfunded, you actually control the budget. You can make a proposal that we need to put more funding into DEM because there is a quarry in your neighborhood that's not being regulated. You can call for an investigation, right? If you are noticing, you can call your other representatives and say, what's going on in your community with DEM? And if they are all saying, yeah, they're not responding to us either, you can investigate, right? You have the power to hold an investigation and hold people accountable, right? Like, this is what is frustrating to me, is there's this idea that just because there's not something that I can maybe do directly, right? That there isn't something that we could do from like an advocacy position and using the power that I do have to try and make some kind of difference, even if it doesn't even like, if it all kind of comes out that this quarry does have grandfather rights and there's nothing we can do about their current operations, there isn't even a conversation of happening of like, well, how do we prevent this from happening again? What's their future oriented plan? Like, it just doesn't happen. And I think what's frustrating is, as an elected official, you have a public platform and you have advocacy abilities that the average citizen doesn't have. And I wish all of our elected representatives in North Smithfield would use that to their advantage and actually think through, what can I do? Not what can't I do, but what can I do to make my constituents feel like I'm in their corner? And I think that's why people are so angry, because there isn't a sense of conversations of, well, this is what we are able to do.
I think our state senators and representatives are elected so that they can represent North Smithfield's needs and like issues at the state level. How can we get North Smithfield connected to state resources, or to have North Smithfield's problems that need state support solved and addressed? And I think the same exact thing is true for our U.S. congressional senators and representatives. They are in D.C. specifically to represent and advocate their district's issues and needs.
Yep, exactly. And they all have, and I think this is, again, something just a part of the citizen advocacy, right? Is that every representative in Washington has Rhode Island-based staff. So when you go off to Washington, you have a local office and you have a local office and you have a DC office. And oftentimes, depending upon the size of the state, is usually kind of the size of your staff. You usually have a couple people on the ground that are sort of responsible for certain districts. So I don't know exactly how many staff members, but like there is usually a specific point person that is responsible for connecting you in your area to this representative. So even if you're like, I need to meet with my elected representative and you're not able to get a meeting directly with, for us, Amo, Reed, or White House, you can almost always meet with a member of their staff. And this is true whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Socialist, Anarchist, Libertarian, I don't care, right? At the end of the day, regardless of who wins the election, that is your representative in DC. And you should and use your role as their constituent to get in touch with them and meet with them if and when you want to. And that should be true of all representatives, right? Like, you should be able to get in touch with and speak with your elected representatives because they work for you at the end of the day. And this is like a joke that I often make, as within Sarah and I's position, we're oftentimes in the room with senators, and we've met with Amo, we've met with Reed. I don't think either one of us has met White House yet, but he's not up for re-election, so he's not as out in the community right now. And sometimes people will be like, oh, do you get nervous? And I'm like, they work for the government.
They work for us.
They work for me. I'm his boss. Why would I be nervous? He should be nervous, right? Like, I think we have to sort of break down this. I think sometimes there's this sense of like, oh, this person has this sort of status or this title. And I'm like, he's my employee. Like, what do I care?
Right.
You know? So there has to be this, I think, and again, I think coming back to this idea of citizen advocacy, you should never be afraid to speak your mind and tell your representative at any level what you want from them and what you need to see from them. And that is really the only way anything is going to change. And this is particularly true now as we're heading into an election year. You know, ask, as candidates are going to be out knocking on your door soon. They are going to come and find you pretty soon.
Right.
They are going to be out and about all over the place, across all levels of government. And we have met now with we met with every attorney general candidate by now. We've spoken with them.
Yep.
And every single one of them I have asked, we have a Quarry in town. This is what is going on within your position as attorney general. What would you do about it? What is your solution? And I'm not going to get into the answers of every single attorney general because we don't have time. Sarah and I have a hard out in 11 minutes. But they've all had kind of different answers, but none of them have said nothing.
Yeah.
None of them have said it's not my problem, right? Because they want me to vote for them. And they don't want to hear.
Which reinforces that we are their boss.
Right. And so but then the second step of that is like, I have asked all of these people, like, what are you going to do about this? I've gotten their answer. I've clocked that in the back of my mind. And then there's going to be an election. This is Rhode Island. So realistically, the Democratic person is going to win. Like, that's just, unless there's some kind of wild change in statistics and math over the next, 6 months. Yeah. One of these people is going to be the new attorney general. And I remember what every single one of them said. And I am going to call them or call their office and say, Attorney General so-and-so made this commitment around the Quarry, and said that they would do this as usually as an advocate, right? This is what they was within their power. Why aren't they doing it? I'm only one person, right? If there are 30 people meeting with the attorney general or 100 people meeting with the attorney general, or even better, 500 people, it just gets harder and harder to ignore, because nobody wants that kind of uprising on their hands. So,
well, I think this is the main thing about advocacy, because it's so easy, and it's a common theme that we've seen where people say, my one voice doesn't matter.
Yep.
Right? What is my one voice going to do? But here's the thing. One voice on its own typically doesn't.
Yep.
Right? But your voice, along with one other person's voice, right? You don't get to that 100 people all calling the attorney general and saying, hey, what can you do to advocate for us? What can you do to support us in this? By saying, not me.
Yep.
Right? It is 100 individual voices who have all stepped up and said, I can make a phone call.
Just encourage everybody, whether you live in the neighborhood or not, to be kind of a pain in the ass about this. And sort of be loud and obnoxious. Again, particularly especially declarations for elections are this week. So really the statewide candidates have been campaigning particularly on a primary, for a while now, but they are going to be more and more present in our communities. Yep. They're going to be out on the streets. They're going to be knocking on doors. They're going to be at events. They're going to, it will never be easier to find a politician than when they are running for re-election. Let me tell you. And so now is the time to really get up in people's faces respectfully, right? But to really just be kind of annoying about this, and see if things can be done. And also use your vote wisely and vote for the politicians, particularly on the town council. Vote for the politicians that have solutions, right? The ones that are saying, I would do this, even if it's, I would argue you could have 5 different politicians or counselors with completely different solutions, but at least if they all have a solution, they can sort of work that out.
Right. But they're willing to do something.
Right. Have a plan. Be willing to do something, even if that something is just I will call DEM every day for a week. Until they just get so annoyed with me that they come out and handle it or whatever, right? That's a tactic, right? And so any plan is better than no plan, even if it's a plan that I don't even necessarily personally agree with. That's me. I'll get off my soapbox now.
It's a good soapbox, and honestly, you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah. So speaking of the elections, do we want to just remind/inform our besties about public comments plans for the election?
Absolutely.
Because we have some really fun and exciting things that we're doing.
It's going to be so good. So guys, we've released 2 episodes. Guys, come closer. Let's gossip. I have the tea. We have the tea on the peeps who are running for election. We are inviting everyone who is seeking election or re-election to the town council onto public comment so that we can have a chit chat with them and see where they stand, get some more information so that just in case they don't make it to knock on your door, because there's a lot of doors in North Smithfield, then we can at least get some info and you can feel like you've still had that conversation with them. Okay. So we have so far released our episodes from our interview with Paul Jones running for town council and Kevin Carrier also running for town council. As people declare, we'll be reaching out to them. If they want to reach out to us, they can always reach us at nspubliccomment@gmail.com. We are happy to have you on. And so we will be recording and releasing those as the election season continues. Declaration period ends tomorrow, I believe.
Yep. Well, so as of right now, I just looked it up. So we are in day 2 of declaration. Candidates have until the end of the day tomorrow. So it's 4 p.m. to declare. As of right now, we have Kevin and Paul, who we've already interviewed, has declared, and Sean Fuller has declared, who I've actually already messaged on Facebook. To invite for an interview. So hopefully, Sean, if you're listening to this, we want to talk to you.
Yay.
We're really fun.
We are a blast, in case you couldn't tell. So in addition to that, we are also doing bingo. So if you download our bingo card, fill in the spaces, and then get a bingo, you will get a handy dandy, super cute sticker from us. Yes, because Elizabeth has them. Girl, should have been more
yesterday.
Prepared.
I'm so excited. Yeah. They came in yesterday. They look so good. So if you're watching this on YouTube, really you can see they came in. They're 3x3. I love the colors. I am so pleased with how they came out.
It's gorgeous. Like it's so cute. I can't wait to put this on a water bottle.
We are also working to host a candidate forum. And we have secured, there are more information to follow. We have secured one moderator who has agreed to moderate. We will not be moderating, which I think is appropriate, largely because many of the candidates are our personal friends. And I think that just would not, I wouldn't even want the impression of bias, even if we tried our best to be fair. So we are not going to moderate. We are going to be more in charge of setting up the tech side of it to make sure that things live stream correctly and people can access it. But we will not be moderating. We have secured a moderator. Sarah's working on co-moderator, so that's why we're kind of holding off on making any formal announcements until we know for sure. But we're really excited about that. And then there's one more really fun thing we're kind of cooking up, but I think we're going to keep that private until we've got details really locked in. So more to 100%. But we're really excited for this kind of last little thing that we're working on.
It's going to be so good. So that's what we've got going on. As always, though, you guys can find us on our Facebook page, Public Comment North Smithfield. Please, please, please come join our group, Public Comment North Smithfield. Everyone is vetted, so you know that you are talking to your neighbors who care about your town. And we can have some really fantastic political and non-political conversations, just like, hey, what's happening this weekend? Feel free to share. We're always happy to have some space for that. And you can also check out our website, nspubliccomment.com. And of course, listen to all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. So Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all that super fun stuff. We are everywhere.
Yeah. All right, besties. We'll see you next time.
See you later, guys.